You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or you're streaming us on the web, WMCLive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of all our previous shows. And let me hear from you. Tweet us at hashtag WMCLive or email me at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Four really interesting women are my guests this week. One survived being trafficked into sexual slavery. Another is one of the world's leading, most influential human rights leaders. The third is an Israeli on the front lines, fighting orthodox religious fundamentalists. And the last is head of the YWCA, which, though a venerable organization, is a hotbed of feminism. We'll also talk about June 6th, the national call to action on immigration reform and what it means for women. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. It's been 20 years since Congress passed the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA. It's the only law that allows millions of mothers, fathers, adult children, and other people who work hard allows them to care for their health and their families without having to worry about losing their health insurance, losing their jobs. But it's way past time for legislators to take the next step by expanding FMLA to cover more workers who need leave for more reasons. We should establish the National Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. We really need it. The National Partnership for Women and Families, which drafted and led the fight to pass the first Family and Medical Leave Act 20 years ago, is behind this. And check it out at their website, National Partnership for Women and Families. These are just some of the reasons. Having a baby is the most expensive single health event for families during childbearing years. 13% of all families become poor within a month of delivery. Now, let's look at some of the real stats. The Family and Medical Leave Act guarantees 12 weeks of unpaid paternal leave. But 40% of the workforce isn't eligible for the act because either their employers have fewer than 50 employees, or they haven't been working for their employers for at least a year and 1,250 hours to the dot. As many as 81% of soon-to-be mothers are not even eligible for the FMLA. The 76% of all voters say that they would support a candidate who proposes paid leave for family care and childbirth. It's civilized. The benefits of paid parental leave. Well, let's look at when and where it's available. When it's available, moms are 93% more likely to be back at their jobs 9 to 12 months later. 40% are less likely to need food stamps. 39% are less likely to need public assistance. 54% more likely to receive post-birth wage increases, and are earning 9% more post-birth than mothers without leave. Let's look at the impact on fathers. When paid parental leave is available, 2 times as many fathers are likely to take leave following a child's birth. Men are more likely to change diapers, clothe, and feed babies at 8 to 12 months. Hello. Babies are 14% more likely to be breastfed and for 5.3 more weeks longer, which is better for the child. More likely also to see the doctor for a checkup, and babies are more likely to get immunized. So, how much parental leave do mothers take? 7 to 10 took less than 12 weeks, the minimum recommended by doctors. 7 in 10 didn't take more time because they couldn't afford to. That's why we need paid leave. 1 in 3 received no paid time, including sick or vacation days for maternity leave at all. And here we have, at last, the U.S. versus the world. Topping the paid maternity leave chart is Canada at 50 weeks, then Norway at 44, England at 20, Denmark at 18, and so forth. And way down at the bottom, 12 weeks is Pakistan, 12 weeks is Mexico, and the United States clocks in at 0 weeks. You can see that we need this to be revisited, and we need it now. And now for our first guest. Stacy Jewell Lewis is the founder of an arts troupe, a stage director, a writer, an advisor to state agencies and nonprofits, a mentor to troubled younger women, and a consciousness-raising speaker. But she wasn't always doing such terrific things. She was once a captive of traffickers, terrorized into sexual slavery. Welcome, Stacy, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're the founder of Who is Stolen? Creative Arts Troupe, and the writer and director of Stolen, From Playgrounds to Streetlights, which is based on this nightmare that you went through and the, I think, remarkably constructive life that you've managed to forge since then. Bring our listeners up to speed. Tell us what happened when you were, I guess it was 19 when you were abducted into sexual trafficking?
Yes. I was 19 years old when I was abducted. I actually was going to drop my son off at the time, and this was something that was a regular pattern for me. I would usually catch the same bus, go the same direction, walk the same block to this location daily. And after I dropped my son off, I was approached by an elderly gentleman, probably around 70 years old at the time. And it was late in the evening. It was around 9:30. I had just missed the bus, actually. And he asked me, did I want a ride? He used the words like, it's not safe out here. There are a lot of unsavory characters who would be, want to do something bad to you. Would you like a ride, to the subway? Maybe it would be a little easier for me. And I looked at this elderly gentleman who reminded me of my grandpa, and I thought to myself, well, he seems safe, and I took a ride with him. But subsequently, he had been paid by a trafficker to actually abduct young women who would feel safe getting into his car. And
they had tracked your movements, so they knew that you kept this regular route. Go on.
They did. They tracked my movements. They knew I had kept this regular route. They also knew that I had a son, which they used as leverage, saying threats like, we know where you live. We know you have a son. We will hurt him, kill him if you do not go with us. So they would make you feel as though you're making a choice, but you're not really making a choice because there are threats to your life and your child.
Of course.
So once I said, yes, I don't want my family harmed, I will go with you, they immediately transported me to another state, which was New York City at the time, where they began the process of training you and grooming you into this lifestyle of sex trafficking, using everything from physical violence to drugs to rape, even, to kind of get you to submit to their will. Once I did submit to this lifestyle, it took me over a year to fully escape the mental strain and brainwashing that they had put over me, as well as the fear. And I actually did not escape the lifestyle until my trafficker was arrested for murder. Then I, had the strength and the courage to leave the lifestyle at that time, which was a grueling process while I was there. And you see so many children much younger than me going through this process, which really broke my heart while I was in that lifestyle as well.
Yeah, we've done we did an entire show on trafficking some months ago, and we've also had Rachel Lloyd from GEMS, Girls Education and Mentoring, I think it is, about that's right, about little girls and children who are abducted into the life. It's an incredible scourge. I mean, there are more female people, girls and women, in slavery, sexual slavery now, than people were enslaved in the South before the Civil War.
Absolutely.
And yet it isn't a priority. I mean, it's people still. There are people out there still who don't believe that it can be still happening.
Absolutely. The problem is that many of us have, as a general audience, which is why I use theater and entertainment to raise awareness, especially with the production 7 Layers Captive, which is one of my full stories, Stolen from Playgrounds So streetlights is more of an overview for an audience just to believe that it can happen to their children and teenagers and in their communities.
Yep.
But we, as a general audience, have just grown to believe that it's out of this. It's not in our country. It's across the globe, but not in America.
Right.
We have been brainwashed into believing that it's cool. Our young people think that words like pimping is just a fad. It's just entertainment. It's just music.
Yeah.
Therefore, we ignore what's actually happening on the streets around us every day. We think our children are susceptible to it. We have grown just kind of to lose sympathy and empathy for our teenagers. So they are easily tracked and abducted into this lifestyle, and then when we see them, we just go, oh, there's just another fast teenager. Oh, there's just another runaway doing their own thing, kind of a lawless to society, instead of looking at them with sympathy, saying, oh, no, this is our child. These are our children being manipulated by men and women who are twice their elders, 37, 40, 45 years old. My trafficker was 37 years old at the time when he abducted me. And just like we tell our children, you need to listen to us because we know more than you. It's the same principle that they use in those streets, and they're afraid because they are adults telling them this, giving them these threats. And they operate looking as if it's by their own free will while silently being manipulated by these perpetrators and predators.
And of course, the pimps say that you shouldn't be on your own because I'm here to protect you. It's like the mafia protecting, concept of protection. And it's a protection that is killing you.
Absolutely. You think that, and they use a system when they're out there. A lot of times we think that they work alone, and sometimes they do, but during the grooming or training process, while they're manipulating girls, they often work in teams. So you'll have another trafficker confirming the other trafficker's stories about being more protected with him or being more protected out here. But most of the time they leave you alone, and you're out there really fending for yourselves while you're being bought and sold for the highest bidder out in the street.
So you're in a continual state of terror.
When people see you, they assume that, this is what you want to, because you're convinced and you're trained in a way to look this way purposefully. But now you're living this lifestyle all along, being brainwashed into this lifestyle. It's really a traumatic experience, and it's unfortunate that we, as a general audience, just don't seem to really grasp the intensity of this terror on our children.
What happened to you when you were able to break free? It was a long process of reacclimation, I'm sure.
I was 19 at the time, so like something I say in my spoken word piece, 10 years in one day, at least I had a developed mind before it was erased clean by my oppressor.
Right.
It's kind of what I say in my spoken word piece, meaning I did have a certain sense of strength and understanding and clarity when I was trafficked because I was 19. So I had gone through high school. I had a child.
Right.
I had hope already in being a mother. This is what really gave me the strength to survive that. So when I came out, my hope to be a mother and to rekindle my relationship with my child was what was driving me. And yes, it was very much a 10-year process, honestly. You go from, just being excited to be free and out of this lifestyle to not knowing how to operate in your newfound freedom because you've been trained that this is the way that
it has
you
to
live
be
every day.
Right. Stacy, we've only got about a minute left, but is there a way, if people want to contact you, is there a website or something where they can, I don't know, book a presentation of your plays? You've written plays, you've done films, you've done amazing artistic work out of this. Is there some place they can contact you, a website?
Absolutely. They can go to www.Stacy Jewell Lewis, that's 3 L's, so that's Stacy, Stacy Jewell Lewis.com, or they can go to whoisstolen.com. Whoisstolen.com is the creative arts troupe, because what I did realize coming out of the life, I gravitated to the arts. The arts is what saved my life.
Thank you, Stacy, for everything that you're doing and for having survived so beautifully and having done more than survived, having blossomed. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was truly a pleasure to speak with you today.
We'll take a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. When we come back, we'll talk with a woman so important to the cause of global human rights that her own country, Australia, put her image on a postage stamp. In just a moment. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy, made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists. Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back. Elizabeth Evatt was the first Chief Justice of the Family Court of Australia and President of the Law Reform Commission. She was a member of the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, CEDAW, and she chaired CEDAW from 1989 to 1991. She also served on the UN Human Rights Committee and, personal note, the two of us climbed and walked the Great Wall of China together. Welcome, Elizabeth, to Women's Media Center Live.
Well, it's good to be here, Robin.
You have so many firsts attached to you that it begins to be surreal. The first Chief Judge of the Family Court of Australia, the first female judge of an Australian federal court, the first Australian to be elected to the United Nations Human Rights Committee, and there's even more. So I'm going to start with an absolutely superficial, silly question, because I've never known anybody else who ever has been on a stamp, a national stamp of their government. How does it feel to be a stamp?
Well, you know, lots of people make jokes about it, but it was rather a nice experience because I shared it with 2 or 3 other people, including Germaine Greer. So we all got together for the launch, and it was great fun. And not only that, but we represented many women in Australia who've done things to promote women's interests, and the launch was attended by a vast number of women, and we all had an excellent time provided by Australia Post.
Well, into more substantial things. Between 1974 and 77, you chaired the Royal Commission on Human Relationships, which is an interesting title. But that commission under your leadership, produced recommendations that ultimately led to the enactment of the Family Law Act in Australia, where the first time no-fault divorce and the single ground of irreconcilable differences, as evidenced by 12-month separation, were introduced. That's quite a great leap forward.
That Family Law Act was being enacted when our commission was set up. Our main task was to look at issues related to abortion, family relationships, yes.
And tell me about those.
At the same time, people think it was a result of that, but they happened independently.
I see.
We were set up to look into abortion law. Also, they extended it to look at all aspects of family relationships, family planning, sex education, education generally, and all kinds of issues related to family and relationships, including things like violence and sex abuse.
So that act established the Family Court of Australia?
Yes.
And you were appointed as the inaugural, Chief Judge?
Yes, I was the first Chief Judge of the Family Court. And the interesting thing about the act, it abolished fault as a ground of divorce, but it also provided absolute equality in terms of husband and wife, mother and father. All the inequalities of the old laws were removed, so that in future we had to establish the principles for dealing equally with issues like maintenance and property, custody of children and so on. So it was a very interesting time.
Well, it's fortunate for women that they had a friend in you in the establishment of a family court, because...
Yes, but I think everyone that was appointed to the court was committed to these goals, and we did our best to make them achievable.
You moved to the international realm, and were appointed as a member of the UN Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women in 1984, right. CEDAW. And later on...
That was one of the best things that I've been involved in, one of the top things.
That's when I think I first met you, when you were chair, just before you became the chair of CEDAW.
I met you, we just adopted a recommendation on female circumcision, or as they call it now, female genital mutilation.
Correct.
And we were the first international UN body to adopt a firm recommendation on that issue.
Yes, and I remember being so impressed by you. On the surface, you were this mild-mannered looking sort of Miss Marple type, and then out with the glasses poised on your nose, peering over your glasses, just the kind of person you'd want to discuss the state of your hydrangeas with. And then out of your mouth came these wonderful feminist things, and I just fell in love on the spot. CEDAW, of course, persists today, and the United States still is not a signatory to the convention.
Well, that's a matter of regret. I mean, most countries of the world have signed up to CEDAW, which we call the Women's Convention, the Women's Convention Against Discrimination, but your country hasn't ratified it yet, the United States. And I believe you also didn't adopt the Equal Rights Amendment.
Quite true.
It's quite incomprehensible.
Well,
to me, that this should be the case.
It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I want to get back to you. Your human rights activism has been so remarkable on so many fronts, as women, as in terms of Aboriginal rights, your critique of the Human Rights Act in the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984 in Australia. You've been on the case for so long. Where do you see human rights today in Australia or even internationally? I mean, we've made some progress, but some days I get depressed and we seem to be slipping back.
There are things that are slipping back. Human rights, I think that one good thing that one can say about human rights is that the international system of human rights is taken much more seriously now than it used to be. Mm-hmm. And it's developing into quite a useful tool to use at the national level or internationally. And of course it's been backed up by the fact that there are the international criminal tribunals which have done such interesting work.
Yes.
So that people don't dismiss international law or the UN as they used to once as being irrelevant. Now it is seen as relevant and not to be ignored. That's why it's such a shame that you're not in CEDAW. But we have suffered setbacks, and some of these have been the result of the international terrorism, which has had the effect of introducing laws, restrictive laws and
preventive
preventive detention, powers of arrest, secret evidence, all these sorts of things, which undermine human rights. So that terrorism has not only put lives in danger and created risk, but it's also led to a withdrawing of certain human rights. And I mean, probably the worst example of that is what's been happening at Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
So that's one aspect. And also in the area of women's rights, there's been a certain complacency about that, certain taken for granted. Mm-hmm. And there's still advances to be made. For example, we've got lots of women in our military services, but there have been terrible cases of abuse of women, sexual abuse of women in the armed services. I guess you've probably had similar problems here.
Oh, we've not only had similar problems, but we've had a lot of headway made. Not enough, but still quite. I mean, it's been on the pages of the front pages of the New York Times.
I think what really is of concern to me is that although we've fought against violence, the women's movement fought against violence with the women's shelter movement and legislation and so on, there is still an enormous level of violence.
Huge. Domestic violence.
Against women and in the world at large.
Yes.
So that violence and gun violence, they are enemies of rights. I never feel that I'm, completely free in a country like this with such widespread gun ownership.
Well, of course.
Gun use. I feel much freer in Australia where we have much less reliance on guns. So these are the things that worry me. And then also, as we learn more about the world, we understand the discrepancies between the lives that you and I lead in our country and the lives that women lead in developing countries.
Of course.
And the growth in trafficking of women, that's another issue that we have to worry about.
Yes, and it is growing, despite the fact that...
It is growing. It's growing. Trafficking women and not only women, but children. And others too. Yes. So we have to... Eternal vigilance is required.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. But, Elizabeth, I'm so grateful to you for doing this and for everything that you do with every breath.
It's always lovely to talk to you, Robin.
Oh, she's a great lady. And I am decidedly not. I realized that I misspoke, and I identified CEDAW as the UN Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women. I think I had violence on the brain from our first guest's experience. Actually, of course, CEDAW is the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Elizabeth naturally identified it correctly. Anyway, this is Women's Media Center Live. We have to take another break. You'll never guess who this is who's talking and made that mistake. Yeah, it's still Robin Morgan. Next up is a woman who gives fundamentalist Haredim, extremist Orthodox Jewish men, apoplexy, not only by challenging them directly regarding their misogyny, but by her virtual underground railroad of escape for Orthodox women.
We know it's not easy dealing with a loved one who drinks too much, but there's help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups. For a meeting near you, call 1-888-4-AL-ANON. That's 1-888-425-2666.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome back. Anat Hoffman is one of many Israeli women outraged at the power of the religious right, the Haredim, in her country, and how they use it against women. She is the chair of the legal and political arm of the Reform Movement in Israel, and previously, for 14 years, she held a seat on the Jerusalem City Council, challenging the power of the religious right wing even then. We talked about the women at the wall. Welcome, Anat, to Women's Media Center Live.
Shalom.
Shalom, back at you, yes. This is an extraordinary thing, Women at the Wall. It's in a sense, it's been going on since 1988, hasn't it? That first feminist conference in Jerusalem, and then women went to pray at the part of the wall that was reserved for men only. And all the way until just recently, was it the Supreme Court that finally came down with a decision that said women had a right to wear prayer garments?
No, it's actually the District Court of Jerusalem, Judge Moshe Dobel, who happens to be an Orthodox judge.
Well.
Male and Orthodox.
Wow, but fair. How unusual.
That's fair.
But the fight is still going on. Just recently, the Orthodox I read, deployed hundreds and hundreds of schoolgirls just to take up the space. And the quote made me crazy. It was worthy of fundamentalists of all religions. He said, one of the rabbis, there were thousands of seminary girls there today, he said. Each one of them will have 10 children. That is our victory. And I thought, that sums up patriarchy.
They actually asked the young women to come to the wall in the back of the bus and protest, so they will forever remain in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
But I must say that rabbi is not seeing the revolution that is happening among ultra-Orthodox women.
Oh.
There is a revolution among ultra-Orthodox women. I must tell you that some of the report that we wrote, Excluded for God's Sake, not some, I'd say almost every item there, it's a long report, is all given to us by Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox women who are calling us and saying, stop this segregation, stop the silencing, save us from our rabbis. Thank God there are reform around that you are willing to fight for us. And I think some of the bravest feminists in Israel today are Orthodox women.
Wow, I have not heard that until this moment. That is extremely encouraging news. When you say the report, tell me what you're talking. Have you issued a report?
I'm the executive director of an organization called the Israel Religious Action Center, which is the legal and political advocacy arm of the reform movement. Mm-hmm. If you log on to our website, the Israel Religious Action Center website, and look for a report called Excluded for God's Sake, you will find the latest report with literally hundreds of cases of segregation, exclusion, and silencing. And the sources of all that are Orthodox women, because I'm not, going to buy a stamp in Carmiel and know that there's a post office that you have to stand in a separate line to buy a stamp. I'm giving Carmiel as an example. Actually, the separate line is in Jerusalem. Yeah. But they're the ones who report to us about segregation on the buses. They're the ones who had the courage to stand up and go to court. We represented them, but they were our clients. The case that changed the segregation in buses to make it illegal, not just on buses, on light rails and on El Al, the Israeli airline company.
Yeah.
Airline, is called Reagan versus the State of Israel. And as you know, Naomi Reagan is an Orthodox novelist.
Yes.
She was picked on the way from Beit Shemesh to Jerusalem, and she just wasn't willing to stand for it.
So if people go to IsraelReligiousActionCenter.org, is that the website name?
That's it, yes.
They can find out more about all of this, and they can also...
A lot more. Okay. More than they ever wanted to know. Sadly, it's a phenomenon that's growing. Yeah. The good news is that whenever we attack it, it immediately disappears and pops up somewhere else. It's as if like
a balloon.
It's some kind of an energy that has to be expressed. Look, what's common to all these segregations is the issue of modesty.
Uh-huh.
And many of the 6,000 girls who came to the wall on that day were very aware that their bodies are a source of immodesty and cause the public to sin. They would easily say that they would like to have God's help in fighting their urge to put on lipstick, to put on perfume, that they wish that they could be beautiful only to their husbands and ugly to all other men, that their skin and their hair and their voice cause the public to sin. These are internalized by these young women.
It's the same thing, it's amazing. There's woman hatred, flesh hatred, joy hatred, is in every fundamentalist, it's at the heart of all fundamentalisms. Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, there's a scarification of the body. I mean, particularly of the female body.
If you want to control a group, you have to tell them that there's something really wrong with them. And then the sad part is that they internalize it.
What are the plans for the women at the wall?
We are part of the Jewish people, and all the Jewish people have a section of about 60 meters that is open to prayer 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. the section is divided between men and women. Women have 12 meters, and men have 48 meters. So Eliza Levy, one of Israel's members of Knesset and the head of the Equality Commission in the Knesset, has just introduced a law that will equalize the size of the women's section to that of the male section.
Okay.
And I would like to emphasize that Eliza Levy is an orthodox member of Knesset. She is modestly dressed. She wrote 2 books about women's prayer. She is certainly orthodox. Goes to an Orthodox synagogue, adheres to orthodoxy, and she is introducing this law just to illustrate again that it's Orthodox women. Where when this rabbi said they're each going to have 10 women,
will he be surprised?
Half of these children will be women, and your whole empire rests on the cooperation of women.
Yes.
And it doesn't look like the cooperation is as complete as the rabbis would like to think. I'm up to my ears in Orthodox women. Do I know the names? I know 1 out of 10.
Well, that doesn't
matter. 1 out of 10 actually shares her name, and even that usually just first name.
It's like they're...
But if you look at our cases, we are amicus of the court. We are friends of the court representing a class action suit of women that are unnamed, but we are showing in a poll that they do exist. For example, there's a radio station in Israel, Kol Barama, where women are not allowed to speak. And when a member of Knesset who's a woman speaks, they beep her out. And the different programs, like a program of exercise after childbirth, is given by a man. And if a woman wants to talk, she has to send a fax to the radio station, and a man will read it. Not mentioning her full first name, but just the first letter of her name and her last name.
Good God.
So we were petitioning a class action suit against this radio station. The government of Israel has just issued a report, or not a report, a decision of the special committee of the government on issues of segregation, and it's now illegal to do that. Kol Barama has already started to hire women, and if they don't want to have their frequency taken away by the government, I think we're going to be hearing women on this radio very soon.
Great.
Are you allowed to say kick ass?
Kick ass, yes, you can say kick ass on this radio.
You have to kick ass, yes. And
right.
you have to, Israel is way too important to be left to Israelis. And I encourage your listeners to take a stand. It's not a spectator sport.
Unfortunately, we've got to go, but I have to thank you so much for what you do, and also for very early in the morning being with us. Thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Toda.
Toda shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Toda shalom. Oh, religion. What would we do without it? Actually, we'd have a sane existence and a better world, but moving from Israel to El Salvador, both of which are candidates for the Surrealism Corner. This week's Surrealism Corner is neither funny, I'm afraid, nor whimsical. There is an El Salvadoran woman who is basically being condemned to death for having been pregnant. Her name is Beatriz. We're keeping her second name private. During her first pregnancy in 2012, it was discovered that she had a very severe condition. She has pre-existing lupus, autoimmune disease, coupled with severe preeclampsia. It forced doctors to perform a C-section, and the baby remained in the hospital for over a month. She didn't want to get pregnant again, but this is a Catholic country. Contraceptives are not easily available, particularly to poor people. So she's pregnant again, and this time the doctors told her the fetus had anencephaly, a birth defect in which the baby's born without parts of the brain and the skull. Almost all anencephalic babies die soon after birth, and then her complications through lupus are life-threatening. But abortion, you guessed it, is illegal completely in El Salvador. This is a legacy of the Liberation Church and of the Revolution, which sided with the Liberation Church, i.e. liberation is for everybody unless everybody is female. So She's waiting for the Salvadoran Supreme Court to rule on her case, which has become a focal point in a broad battle over abortion in Roman Catholic Latin America. She was quoted as saying, "I don't want to die, I want to be with my other baby, my real baby, taking care of him." United Nations human rights experts have called on El Salvador to make an exception in cases of therapeutic abortion. The Salvadoran Church has stood firm, saying this case cannot be used to legislate against human life. Several Latin American nations have softened their stances in recent years on abortion. Uruguay's Senate approved a bill last year allowing women to terminate pregnancies during the first trimester for any reason. This is after an earlier move to legalize the procedure in Mexico City. Courts in Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina have loosened restrictions, allowing them in certain cases like rape or when the fetus is expected to die. This fetus is expected to die. The woman, however, is also expected to die unless there can be an intervention. But the Church holds firm. If someone has appendicitis, we have to remove the appendix, but we can't say we'll remove it now because maybe in the future there'll be a problem. In other words, maybe the baby will die. There's a chance extremely slim that the baby will live, and maybe the mother won't die. This is surreal in the worst possible sense. When she testified in court to beg for her life, they didn't believe that she had lupus. So standing in front of the judges, she had to uncover her arms, chest, and back to reveal lupus-related sores. This is a humiliation and an atrocity of an individual woman that is obscene, and certainly in the worst sense, surreal. Finally comes the Supreme Court ruling. 4-1, the court says that her disease is under control, it finds, so she can continue the pregnancy. Then, at the 11th hour, Health Minister Maria Isabel Rodriguez ruled that Beatrice, the woman who is 6 months pregnant, can be delivered by cesarean section. Whether this counts as an abortion or not is how many suffering women can dance on the head of a pin. But she will have the C-section. Whether she can survive it or not is another matter. We have another pause coming up. This is Women's Media Center Live, and really, you know what you're listening to. Why do I have to tell you? Because that's the rule, I guess, and because I'm still Robin Morgan. We'll be back in just a minute with the woman who runs all the YWCAs in the country and is recommitting them to being, well, the F word, feminist.
If you ever need an organ transplant, you will probably die before you get one. Thousands of Americans die waiting every year. You can improve your odds by joining LifeSharers, and it's free. Visit lifesharers.org or call 888-ORGAN-88. LifeSharers puts organ donors first. When you join LifeSharers, you get preferred access to the organs of other members. This could literally save your life. Join LifeSharers today. There's no age limit, parents can enroll their minor children, and no one is excluded due to any pre-existing medical condition. Call 888-ORGAN-88 or visit lifesharers.org. That's LifeSharers.org. LifeSharers. It's free. It could save your life.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back again, this time with Dr. Dara Richardson-Heron, leader and CEO of the YWCA USA, working to improve life for more than 2 million women, girls, and men and families of color. Nor is she about to overlook engaging the Y about the plight of immigrant women in the USA. Her numerous honors include a Woman of Excellence Award from the United Way of New York City and a Black Achiever in Industry Award, and she was named one of the 25 most influential black women in business by the Network Journal. Welcome, Dr. Richardson-Heron, otherwise known as Dara, to the Women's Media Center Live.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Robin.
It's very exciting to have you here, particularly now because we're about to embark on this National Day of Action for Immigration Reform, which coincides, with, not by coincidence, I'm sure, with the Y week of conferences and lobbying and good stuff. So tell us about it.
Well, that's great, Robin. Each year, our YWCA convenes hundreds of women leaders really to invigorate our collective vision for the future, empower our local association executives, and advocate for issues that are impacting women, girls, and families on Capitol Hill. And this year, as you know, we're going to be focusing on immigration reform, which we think is so important for women today because the face of the immigrant woman, of the immigrants in the United States is increasingly that of a woman.
That's right.
And that's very, very important for us because, as you know, we're dedicated to empowering women and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. So it's a big day for us.
Confession time. I used to be a bigot about the YWCA when I was a young radical broom-riding witch, radical feminist, and I thought the Ys were sort of middle class and bourgeois, as we used to say, a place where people went to go swimming, And when I first became active in the global women's movement, that's where I met my comeuppance, because the job that the YWCAs and YWHAs were doing in the global South, particularly South Asia, Africa, South America, was amazing. That's where the feminist movement was. That's where the Battered Women's Shelter was. That's where the Rape Crisis Center was. That's where women knew they could go for support. And I felt very dumb, stupid, and bigoted. Came back and looked at the Ys in the United States, which you now head, and found that also that they were hotbeds of feminism. So I have reacted rather differently to the Ys in the intervening years since I was a bigot.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that, and you're anything but a bigot. I mean, first of all, your work in the women's movement has been just incredible, and certainly, I want to thank you for all your work, and you're absolutely right. YWCAs across the United States, we speak out on behalf of women and girls and what they face today, whether it be racial, ethnic, and gender disparities, domestic violence, sexual assault, the gamut, lack of affordable child care and after-school programs, job training. We're much more than just swimming pools and fitness centers. We really are making an impact in the lives of women across the United States. And that's what we do and have done for more than 154 years.
And you're not only looking at the past, you're very au courant, because last week on the show we were talking briefly about the blog carnival that you set up and the Twitter activism that you set up, all moving toward the National Day of Action.
That's right.
On immigration reform. So you're nerds, you're geeks, you're hip.
We really are, geeks. We're hip, and we really feel that as the iconic organization, we have to be out there at the forefront making a difference in the lives of women and girls because, I can't tell you, how difficult it is in this day. We really are we live in a time now when we have to work extremely hard just to maintain the same rights that we and you and others have fought for decades.
Yeah.
We've almost come full circle.
I know.
And we at the YWCA, we have an unwavering commitment to the elimination of racism, sexism, and making sure that women are empowered in every way, and we are going to continue to do that for years and years. We kind of have three pillars. We have our economic empowerment, which is crucial to everything we do. We have health and safety, which includes, violence against women, reproductive rights, and then the racial justice and civil rights. Those are kind of our three pillars. And what's striking to me is that, the advancement of women in our workplaces and our government, we know there are numerous studies that have already shown that will have a tremendous impact, but it's still elusive, and I just don't know, why it is so. But I tell you, at the YWCA, we're going to make a loud voice and make sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that women have parity on these issues, and that we also have our rightful place in this democracy. It's just we have to do it.
I would love to be a fly on the wall when you lobby on the Hill. Now, there are visits to Congress people, yes, during the week of activism and during your conference?
Absolutely. On June 6th, there's a National Day of Action, and we're actually going to be combining with other women leaders and leaders from our organization, where we're going to actually go and talk about the passage of comprehensive common sense reform with a focus on women, girls, and immigrant communities. We think it's very, very important. And for those of you, even if you can't make it to D.C., we want you to, email, tweet your members of Congress, ask them to support immigration reform legislation that protects women and families. And you can visit our website at YWCA.org for more information. But it's critical for all of us to get involved and engaged in this debate. It's so important.
Yes, it really is. Educating Congress, which has become a more than full-time job because Congress is less educated this go-round than in a long time in my memory. But educating Congress is absolutely crucial because on the one hand, some of the same folks who sanctify the family, and children. In fact, they would interfere with women's reproductive rights because you should have more children. When the children are actually born and living in the real world, suddenly their concern goes elsewhere because the children can go hungry, the children could be poor, can lack shelter, can be in an immigrant family separated from their mother or their father, breaks up. The same people who worship the sanctity of the family, and that's why they were against gay marriage, don't seem to mind when it's tearing apart an immigrant family.
Well, we know that the majority of women migrate to reunite with their family to make a better life for their children or escape violence or oppression, so that prevents them from living full and free lives. So, we as the YWCA, I don't know if you know, we're also the largest provider of domestic violence services in the United States. So we feel that all women, even women who are immigrants, should have access to these kinds of services. And we have a huge stake in what happens with comprehensive immigration reform.
Absolutely. With you now heading them, it's only been about a year, right?
Actually, not even a year. December 2012 was my actually first official day as the CEO of the YWCA of the USA, so it has not even been a full year. It's been
but you hit the ground running, it sounds like.
Oh, gosh. I have to tell you, for much of my life and career, I've been involved in making sure that women have access to high-quality health care, that we have equal rights. I'm a woman, and I've experienced some of the same things that many of the women that we serve face, and and so that just gives me even more fuel to make sure that we as a YWCA are doing everything we can to make sure that women are treated fairly.
Well, I think the Y is very lucky to have you as its mother right now. Say again the website so people can find out more about the National Day of Action and what the Y does.
It's at ywca.org. You can find out all about our organization. You can certainly donate to our cause, and then you can participate in our upcoming event. We really want you to support us because every woman and every girl has a stake in the success of our organization.
Oh, this is so true. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. You are just terrific.
Well, Robin, thank you for being such a strong leader in the women's movement. I thank you for your time, and really I'm honored to be on your show.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. I am not a fan of the word closure. I think it's way overused, and also I think it really doesn't have any meaning. There are some wounds that are so profound that they never heal. You go on living, but the idea that it's closed is, at the very least, naive. Survivors of Pol Pot's regime, of Rwanda's genocide, of the Holocaust. Those ripples are being felt today in children and grandchildren, and the survivor guilt that informs the politics of Israel. The comfort women in Japan. And lately I've been haunted by the Magdalene women of the laundries in Ireland. Just a few months ago, the Speaker of the Irish Parliament formally made the Irish state's apology to over 10,000 women and girls who had been incarcerated with the help of the state by the Catholic Church in Catholic-run laundries where they were treated as virtual slaves. These were nun-controlled laundries, and the government announced that they would erect a memorial to remember the 10,000 Magdalene women, and that they would legalize a compensation package for about 800 women who were survivors. And the compensation deal will include counseling services and health care and some individual payments. It's the families of most of the women who are no longer alive who brought suit. one example were the children of a woman named Margaret Bullen, who was in one of the most notorious Magdalen laundries or workhouses for girls, where she toiled since 1967 through 1995 when they found her, 6 days a week without pay. She was 42 and she looked 82. She never received any pay for the decades of labor, nor did the religious order running the laundry pay contributions toward a pension. She stopped working in 96 when the last of the laundries closed, and she lived in a convent attached to the laundry for the rest of her life, and died in 2003 of something called good pasture syndrome, a disease associated with exposure to toxic chemicals used in the laundry, and was buried in a communal grave for Magdalen women in Dublin. The laundries were a network of 10 institutions run by 4 religious orders, named the Sisters of Mercy, the Sisters of Charity, the Sisters of the Good Shepherd, and the Sisters of Our Lady of Charity of Refuge. They were used in certain cases to detain women considered deviant, women who had children outside marriage, girls deemed flirtatious. These were preventive cases. Girls with mental disabilities and victims of sexual abuse. Often these women were turned in by their family, and they just disappeared from society. The report found that a quarter of the women who passed through the institutions were sent by the state. The laundries operated as a parallel prison system to which Irish courts routinely sent women for petty crimes, sentencing, shoplifting. Women were referred from government-run mother and baby homes, too, and girls from industrial schools were sometimes transferred there when they reached puberty. State employees, like the police, regularly returned any girl who escaped. And this sounds like torture. And I think of those lives, those individual lives of over 10,000 women. It's not a melodramatic, catastrophic kind of tragedy. It's just profoundly bleak, day after year after decade. And that there's closure on that for a few pennies and an apology, I don't think so. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of our previous shows. Remember to email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program, Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Bruns, and our founding sponsor, Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week when, among other things, we'll hear an Inside the Court report on the Supremes and DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, and we'll visit another front line, combat, with a woman who is a war correspondent and photographer. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.